everybody. My name is Victor. I'm the head of AI and ML solutions at a company called Cloud Office. So, you see, I have been developing AI solutions for the better part of my career. So it's a bit strange to walk on this stage and tell you that I'm actually quite terrified about what the potential future holds. And I'm not talking about these sensationalized, science fiction type of scenarios, like the Terminator and iRobot that a lot of people are actually imagining. But I'm talking about a very serious and very real problem that paints a future which could be just as disturbing as this. And the specific problem that I'm speaking about is that we are surely and slowly losing some very fundamental human capabilities that we are now outsourcing to AI. And as a result of that, we are also losing our control and agency in the process. And this is not some form of speculation that I have. It's not some form of hypothesis. This is actually something which is heavily studied in the current literature. Some time ago, in March of this year, a paper came out which described the 5-step framework through which this is happening. It's something that we call the cognitive offloading ladder. And if you look retrospectively, you would see that we actually started climbing this ladder a very long time ago. And it's important to trace this process, back to its very origin, to understand its true scale, to understand how it's going to impact businesses, how it's going to impact humanity, and what we can actually do about it. And you see, the first few steps that we climbed were actually a very good thing. The first thing that we started outsourcing was memory. And outsourcing memory came with writing, but nowadays it can come in many different forms. It can come in digital notes, it can come in flashcards, it can come in reminders that you set, and this actually enhanced our intellect. So there's technologies that would actually augment our cognitive abilities. In this specific case, we freed up a lot of our memory capacity so that we could redirect it to things which are more intellectually demanding. Right? So this was actually a good thing. And the next step was procedure. So this is step 2. Step 2 is also a very good thing. Procedure basically came about with the Industrial Revolution. This is when we started automating certain procedures which were very repetitive, very routine. And back in the days, these were very physical sort of activities. But nowadays, these can be rule-based systems in companies. They can be RPA processes. This can be all kinds of algorithms which are actually automating a lot of repetitive, mundane, routine tasks. And we do lose the capability of doing these tasks, but nobody really cares about that because these capabilities are very narrow. They're tied to one specific task, and they don't really transfer to anything else which is important, in your life. But this is exactly what soon started changing. You see, AI came about in 1956. 1956 was the year in which AI was first coined as a term. This was 70 years ago. And I think the first true milestone that was reached was actually in 1997. So this is when the IBM computer Deep Blue beat the world champion at chess, Garry Kasparov. This was a huge shock. And chess is very hard. To give you an example of how hard it is, the number of possible moves on a chessboard is more than the number of the observable atoms in the observable universe, right? And still, in 1997, so this was almost 30 years ago, AI could master this. So something very fundamental started shifting there, because intelligence, we've always viewed it as something which was exclusive to humans. And for the first time in history, we started understanding that we could be wrong about this. So we started building trust towards these AI systems. And this was very important because it was the foundation of what was to come next. And sometime after that, our whole civilization entered into step 3. Step 3 is when we start outsourcing strategy. So it's not about things that AI can do, tasks that AI can do. It's also about AI deciding actively what deserves our attention. So think about all the algorithms, for example, recommendation algorithms. What you see on social media, what you would see on Netflix, Spotify, YouTube, media in general, what articles you read. These are all powered by these so-called recommendation algorithms, which actively decide what you see. And on paper, this is still considered within the safe zone. But in reality, I would say that it starts getting a little bit more controversial. And the first time in which a scandal broke out was when Facebook actually did an experiment in which they actively manipulated about 700,000 different users. By manipulating their feeds, they would actually see how their behavior is going to change. So these recommendation algorithms, they would study our behavior, but then they would define what we are going to see, and what we are seeing actually changes our behavior and changes who we are as well. Now, this started getting a little bit controversial, but it doesn't even compare with what was to come next. Because step 4 was outsourcing judgment. And this first happened on an institutional level, right? So the first time in which this happened was, I would say, 2016. There's a system called Compass, which was used in the US judicial system to decide whether somebody should stay in jail based on his probability of reoffending or not. And the problem with this system is that we don't really understand these models. They're black box models, they cannot really explain themselves. And now we're deciding the people's fate based on a system that we don't understand. This is just one example, but there was a lot of so-called consequential systems like this. So, banks would use algorithms to decide who is going to get a loan or not. Companies would use AI algorithm to decide who is going to be a suitable candidate for a job or not, right? And this is where things start getting a little bit more disturbing. It actually reminds me of a story, of a book that I read some time ago. It's called The Trial. This is a book which was written by Franz Kafka some time ago, and it's about this protagonist called Joseph K. So Joseph K. is somebody who is being accused, he's being arrested, but he's never really told what he is accused of. It's horrifying because he's rendered completely powerless by the bureaucracy, and because he doesn't even know what he has done, he doesn't even know how to defend himself. So in the end, eventually he gets executed. So this is something which is a more realistic type of bad scenario of something that can happen with AI than what most people would imagine with the Terminator, iRobot, Westland type of scenarios. And I'm going to give you a couple of more stories like this until the end of the presentation. But you see, this was when we outsourced the judgment on some institutional level. And now we were about to do the same thing, but on the individual level. So millions of individuals would start outsourcing judgment on AI algorithms when large language models came about. And the problem is that once we started doing this, we also started losing our agency. And I'm going to tell you exactly how this is happening right now in a company. So imagine any employee. This could be some data scientist. This can be a visual designer. This can be a sales representative, in a company. All of them could be using AI right now. Now, what happens is that when AI improves, they start outsourcing a lot more of their work to AI systems, right? So this is where we have this cognitive offloading. They use more AI systems. As a result, they start producing more output, right? They become much more productive, and this is exactly what happens. I mean, you can see that programmers are many times more productive than they were before. Visual designers would produce a lot of visuals much more effectively than they did before, which is great. Managers see that. They can see that they're performing very well. They actually encourage that. In the same time, what happens is that they start losing the capabilities of performing these tasks themselves. And this is where we enter what I call a dead loop, right? Because the more we lose the capability, the more we outsource, because we have no other choice. And the more we outsource, the more we lose the capability, right? And at some point, we reach this paradox. You see, the best performing employees in a company are also the ones that have suffered the most loss in capability. This is what literature now knows as the performance paradox. And it becomes worse than that, because the more output is being produced by AI systems, the more we have to review this output. Which means that the review burden becomes a lot, and because we have also lost the capability of actually understanding these systems and doing these reviews, in the end, we start blindly trusting these systems more and more and more. So we start producing results that we don't even review anymore, and we just automatically rely on them, right? So this is the second story that I wanted to tell you about. because this is a story which reflects the exact same mechanism on a civilizational scale. It's a book called The Machine Stops. It was written by E.M. Forster, and it's about the idea that at some point, if humanity becomes completely dependent, on the machines, what exactly is going to happen? Because if you think about it, we have always stored our knowledge in books, but books could not do things for us. So we always need to teach the next generation, which made a chain of tens of thousands of generations where we transfer some knowledge. And now we ask the question, what happens when this chain suddenly breaks? And it could paint a very terrifying picture. But you see, the solution is not rejecting AI, because we don't have a choice. It's already here. If you stop using the AI systems nowadays, your company is going to die as a result of some other company which is going to succeed a lot more because it's going to do a lot more than what your company does. The solution is to adapt. And there's actually these so-called frontier professionals. Microsoft did research on that, which are breaking this paradox. And the way that they're breaking this paradox is that they actively use AI, but they use it in a very different way than what the general user would use it. They would intentionally insert friction points, right? They would rely a lot more on doing very thorough quality reviews of what the AI systems are producing. They would spend time that they would not use AI systems and then develop these capabilities, for instance, coding without using AI, so that they can maintain these skills. And these employees are actually much more valuable for the companies. They're producing much more value than all the other types of employees. So I guess one takeaway from this is that as managers, we should start focusing on incentivizing quality over quantity more. Because managers are now really incentivizing all the quantity of the work which is being performed, but we should stop at some point and think about the critical thinking of the employees and how they truly produce something which is much more qualitative. And the other part of the solution comes with how we design these systems. And I like to think of them as a control room. So when you deploy a certain system, AI system in your company, there's a lot of different factors. There's 5 different stages or stations of this control room, which are very important. You need to have the map, which includes all these documentations, which would link, accountability of a certain person to the system. Inserting humans in the loop, which is very important. The way we monitor those systems is also very important. It's a technical type of task that you should do. So there's ways in which you can design these systems so that they actually help your employees maintain their cognitive abilities as well. And this is part of what we do also with Cloud Office. We deploy, a lot of AI systems, I've left a QR code here in case you want to have a conversation about this, right? But the problem goes way beyond companies. It really does, because in the same way in which we outsource, some very technical capabilities, we also outsource some very deeply human capabilities. I'm talking about creativity. I'm talking about emotional intelligence, communication. People forget how to communicate. It's this very strange phenomenon. Like if you open LinkedIn, I'm generally sick about it. When we open LinkedIn nowadays, you can see all these perfectly phrased and well-written posts everywhere, which are entirely emptied from the human person which actually wrote them. And it's not just LinkedIn. It's a lot of the articles that I read. It's some of the books that I have recently read as well. But I think the most shocking part is how everything sounds so the same. Right? It's like the entire civilization is converging on a single voice. And this single voice is everywhere, and at the same time, it doesn't really belong to anybody. So it's a deeply humanitarian type of issue. We also lose our ability to have a voice in this world as well. So I really thought about this. This is the third and last story that I wanted to tell you. It's actually a scene from a very famous play. It's called Tchervenobrejki. You can excuse my French translation. It's probably not very good. But you see, what happens in the scene is that you have 3 main characters, right? You have Cyrano, who is like a brilliant poet. You have Christian, who is a handsome soldier, and then you have Roxanne, which sits on the balcony. And what's going to happen is that Cyrano is going to whisper words to Christian and Christian is going to repeat them out loud to Roxanne. So Roxanne would see Christian, she would hear words, but she does not know that these words do not belong to the face that she sees. And she would see a face without knowing that this face does not belong to the words that she hears. So any sort of affection that she develops with what's happening is going to be entirely deceptive. This is something which is going to disappear immediately whenever the truth is known. And this type of deception is currently happening on a civilizational level. But I wanted to test this. You know, I wanted to do an experiment to see how far it's going to go. And every person has some way of holding this line himself. Every person has a way of having a voice. And one part of what I do, for instance, is talks like this, presentations like this. I really take them very seriously. I think a lot about them. I have developed this playbook of different things that I do to communicate the message more effectively. And I decided to see if there is a way in which AI could produce the same thing, right? Because probably it is going to produce very good speeches, but can it do it in exactly the same way? So I built a system. This is the same type of system that we built at Cloud Office. It's called a multi-agent system. It contains many different agents. It was deployed in something that we call the Agent Development Kit. It has different types of agents. It has a visual designer, somebody that writes the script, and so on. And I've trained it specifically on the way I build the presentations, right? So I decided to test it, to give you a demo, but the demo has already been shown, because this is the entire structure of my presentation that you see here. And we're currently at this midpoint section. So everything, starting from my frustration with LinkedIn, up until this very current point, is something that I recited word by word from what the agent wrote, including all the slides. This section is also currently written by the agent, so every word that I'm currently reciting is actually something which is not authored by me. I'm reciting this word by word, right? And if you don't believe me, I'm going to show you the script on the slide for you to see that I'm actually reciting everything, right? See, the agent, I have even internalized the filler words, that Victor uses. But things are actually about to get much stranger than this. You see, we're currently here. This is what we call the midpoint of the presentation. And the midpoint in any play is where everything that the audience knows is being reframed. And what's happening right now is that I'm presenting to you an agent which built the presentation that I'm presenting, right? The presentation itself is being the object of my presentation. This slide that you see here, the structure slide, is part of the structure slide. And the reason why I'm being so deliberate about this, the reason why we're building all of this confusion, which is happening, this is a feeling which is another step which we're crossing right now live on stage. And this is what I call the voice. It's an example of that. So this is exactly how powerful AI can be in replacing who you are and mimicking intelligence without actually having this intelligence ourselves. And just to explain to you the analogy, now that it's no longer an analogy, Cyrano was the agent, I was Christian, and the audience was basically Roxanne. And just to finish on a very important note, you see, Plato was in the same situation as we're currently in a long time ago. He was worrying about writing. He wasn't worrying about AI. And he would say that, writing is going to damage our memory, and it would only give us the appearance of intelligence without us actually having it. But the funny thing is that Plato wrote the warning about writing in writing, right? Much like I'm using AI right now to tell you that AI is dangerous. So the idea is that we should not be rejecting the technology. We have no choice, really. Writing was already there, much like AI is currently here. We should be adapting to it, but we should be taking this responsibility very seriously. And it goes beyond corporations. It goes into how we basically adapt our educational systems as well. It goes into thinking about parenthood as well. There's many different dimensions in which this goes, but we start with paying attention and caring about this problem and thinking about it. So the responsibility is something that lies with all of you. This is it. Thank you.